Tired of having the memory of a goldfish? Remember more of what you need most with these science-backed tips.
Quick question. Do you remember what you ate for dinner, say, 2 weeks ago? The answer is likely no, and that's a good thing because we want to be able to remember critical pieces of information while forgetting unimportant details that would bog us down. This is actually crucial for the brain. The power of memory, the reason why it benefits us, comes not just from the ability to remember things from the past, but also from the ability to help us make sense of what's happening in the present and then flexibly and creatively plan for the future. Think of forgetting as your brain's way of zooming out to see the big picture. It helps you see the forest instead of getting lost in the individual trees. When you forget some of the smaller, less significant details, it's like clearing away clutter, making it easier to spot the patterns and connections between different memories and experiences. It's like stepping back from a painting to appreciate the full masterpiece. So even though you might not remember the exact shirt that you wore to your appointment last Wednesday, you might find that you can still remember generally how long it took you to get to the building where your appointment was, even if you've never been to that specific building before. If you generally remember how long it takes you to get to certain parts of town from past experience, you can use this to plan ahead and make decisions, like roughly predicting when to leave home to get to a desired destination in the future. These memories from past events give you the information that you need to make a better decision. So, now that we've talked about why we might forget things, we can use this to help us when it comes to, well, remembering things, because there are lots of things that we want to remember. What I want to talk to you about today is ways to improve memory, including those smaller details so you don't find yourself struggling to remember crucial points during a presentation or blanking in the middle of a final exam. Coming up, here are 3 tips and strategies to help you improve your memory. Oh, and it does get nerdy at the end, fair warning. Stick around if that's your cup of tea. Tip number 1 is all about something called memory palaces. Now, first, I have a fantastical story to share with you, and feel free to use your imagination as we go along. I'm standing outside my gray front door. Now, this front door, it's kind of like a dark gray, like a lead pencil, as opposed to the light gray of sweatpants. On this gray front door hangs a wreath of fresh, bright, sunshine yellow lemons, which emits a bright, tart citrus scent. I open the door and I step inside and see none other than my dog dashing towards me, excited to greet me with a carton of milk hanging from his mouth. He has somehow avoided puncturing the box and spilling the milk. I walk further down the hall and see on the kitchen island a carton of eggs and a giant tub of taro-flavored protein powder, maybe ready to be turned into protein pancakes. The oven is on, the scent of chicken fills the room, and I peer into the oven to see a rotisserie chicken warming up. It looks like I spoke too soon. My dog rushes into the kitchen, a punctured milk carton hanging from his mouth. I spot the paper towels next to my salt and pepper shakers, ready to clean up the mess. So, what was the point of this story? Before I get to that, let's talk about what a memory palace is and how we can use it to remember more. If you've ever watched the show Sherlock, you may be familiar with this technique, which is featured in many episodes. A memory palace, also referred to as a mind palace or method of loci, is a mnemonic technique used to improve memory. It works by mentally associating pieces of information with specific locations in a familiar space, like your house or a route that you frequently take, or even a fictional place in your imagination. What I would do if I were using this technique is I would imagine walking through these spaces. Then I'd associate the information I want to remember with distinct visual cues. As I mentally stroll through the space, I can retrieve the information associated with each visual cue. This lets me enhance my ability to remember and recall information more effectively, which is why if I think about entering my house through the dark gray door, I can remember lemons, milk, eggs, protein powder, rotisserie chicken, and paper towels, the 6 items on my grocery list. But why does this technique work so effectively? This study investigated the world's most successful memory athletes, like Joshua Foer, who used techniques like the memory palace technique, among others. By harnessing visualization and spatial memory as you visualize familiar environments, you can retrieve information by retracing your steps. So whether you're memorizing a speech, a list of facts, or even a deck of cards, your memory palace may be your secret weapon for memory mastery. Next, we'll talk about interleaving. An easy way that I think about interleaving is it's the opposite of blocking or massed practice, which many students are used to, where you focus on one topic or skill at a time. Interleaving to me also sounds like interweaving, where you blend or mix yarn or different fabrics together, which helps me visualize this. Interleaving involves mixing various topics or skills to enhance learning and to better remember things. For example, I took some tennis lessons once upon a time, and we focused on massed practice. First, we focused only on the forehand swing. Once we mastered that well enough for our level, we learned how to do a backhand. And then once we had that down, we learned how to do a serve. So we'd learn skill A before skill B, and then skill C, and so on. If we instead learned via interleaving, we might first do maybe 15 minutes of forehands, then 15 minutes of backhands, then 15 minutes of serves, and then repeat the cycle a few times until the end of the session. If you want to give this a try with a class you're taking, what you might do is go over different topics within a particular subject during a study session. For instance, when studying physics, instead of focusing solely on gravity practice problems, try interspersing them with questions on, say, the normal force, maybe friction as well. The idea is to basically engage with a variety of related topics, with the aim of enhancing your comprehension and recall. This method sharpens your brain's ability to distinguish between different concepts or skills, leading to deeper understanding and retention. Now, if you're ready to get a little bit nerdy, tip number 3 is all about understanding. This memory tip is about, well, not relying on superficial memorization to remember things better. Sounds a bit odd, but hear me out. The goal is to understand instead of relying on superficial rote memorization. To get a better sense of how all of this sort of comes together, let's take a deeper dive into memory. Here's where it gets nerdy. This is a memory. Sort of. What's cool is that this image shows memory engram cells labeled green and red in the prefrontal cortex of a mouse. And according to this review article, findings are beginning to define an engram as the basic unit of memory. Our memories are intricately woven together through the connections between neurons in our brains. When we learn something new, connections between neurons are formed via synapses. Each of the brain's 100 billion nerve cells can have 10,000 connections to other nerve cells, according to this Johns Hopkins article. Take a second to let that sink in. 100 billion nerve cells. 10,000 connections to other nerve cells each. If I try to calculate the sheer number of possible connections the brain can create, the kinds of networks and the sort of flexibility that comes from that is mind-boggling. Neurons selectively reinforce their connections with each other. Exposure and repetition strengthen connections, while a lack of exposure weakens them. This forms networks of cells that collectively encode memories. When we work to understand a concept or idea, this enhances memory retention because we're promoting meaningful cognitive connections, whereas rote memorization relies on repetitive recall, often without deep comprehension. Now, back to understanding instead of just superficial memorization. Frankly, I hesitated when deciding whether or not I wanted to include this, as it can sound a bit basic. Sort of like eat your vegetables can be a bit of a basic tip for anyone who wants to get healthier. Nonetheless, I do think it's an important tip worth mentioning. Also, as a quick caveat, there's a time and place for memorization. Memorization is not a bad thing. Sometimes you just have to do it. But understanding can take your learning and memory to the next level, helping concepts stick and helping you apply what you know in new ways. Let's look at an example. This is Franklin. Franklin wants to learn French. These are 3 phrases in his textbook. Répétez s'il vous plaît, je ne comprends pas, and qu'est-ce qui se passe? Franklin could use brute force to somehow memorize each of these phrases and what they mean with no context or understanding of grammar, rules, vocabulary, or how the language works. However, he might not remember them very well, and if he ever wanted to form a new sentence beyond these, well, good luck. Now, imagine instead that Franklin focuses on understanding the underlying patterns and logic of the language. We're talking root words, common vocabulary, prefixes, and suffixes, as well as the rules for sentence structure and verb conjugation. With deeper understanding, Franklin can more easily deduce the meanings of unfamiliar words and construct sentences on his own, even ones he hasn't explicitly memorized. This understanding allows Franklin to communicate more fluently and confidently in real-life situations. And across other subjects, understanding helps with deeper comprehension and recall. I hope you found these tips helpful. If you want to learn more about procrastination and how to stop procrastinating, watch this video next. And as always, if you give this video a like, it lets me know what to make more of so I can keep making content that's hopefully helpful and fun to watch. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye!